After a meteoric rise up the entrepreneurial ladder and set to do extremely well for himself, a silly mistake resulted in a motor car crash which almost took Barry Blomkamp out. Suddenly he was totally blind, contemplating amputation of both his legs, physically and mentally broken, forced to stay months in hospital, his young family in ruins, his expanding business down the tubes, reliving the mistake every day, experiencing emotional despair and feeling trapped in a disabled body with no way out. Then the light. He extracted an extremely important lesson from the tragic mess he had found himself in. What that was, he's going to tell us after I've welcomed onto the program one of SA's, they say, foremost inspirational speakers and corporate entertainers. Super to have you join us, Barry.
My pleasure indeed. Thank you very much, Lynn, and to all the listeners.
Yes, thank you. I hope I didn't embarrass you too much, eh?
No, that was lovely.
Because I can't see you blushing.
No, I can't see you blushing either. There's the thing.
Barry, take us back to the day of the accident. Do you want to talk about the mistake or not really?
I can certainly talk about the mistake. Just going prior to the accident, my big ambition from being a little boy and being car crazy, a petrol head as they call them. My dad first took me down to Killarney Racetrack here in Tableview at the age of 10, and of course the bug bit like mad then, and I was mad about motor cars ever since then, and developed the ambition of wanting to own a sports car and race it. And this ambition was finally achieved shortly after our marriage and having bought our first home and settled down, and I got my own business up and running, my own service station, and repairing the local cars around the area and doing very well. And what you suddenly develop what is known as disposable income. And I could afford to buy my sports car, so I went out and bought a Lotus. And the evening of the accident, I was taking a friend for a spin around the block. He hadn't been for a ride in the Lotus, and I was showing off, and it's only 15 minutes, and we weren't wearing safety belts, and all that silly boy stuff. And anyways, I got onto a dark road, and I got the car out of control, spun it, and crashed it into the back of another car parked on a driveway. And the impact, the cops measured at only 45 kilometers an hour we were traveling at the time. Not very fast, and the average bicycle can go that speed.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, with everything that is not strapped in and safety belted into the car, it continues moving forward at that same speed.
Indeed.
I think stats say something like a normal body, 70, 80 kilograms, will move into the region of 3 tons of flying weight.
I can imagine that, yeah.
Anyways, I ended up with both my legs crushed underneath the dashboard, my chest crushed up against the steering wheel, and my face buried right through the windscreen. My normal day spectacles, glasses, reading glasses, whatever, they were pushed right into my eyes and basically cut my eyeballs completely into pieces. Yeah, it was, spent
not a
several
pretty
months.
sight.
No, it was very ugly, lots of blood. Fortunately, the ambulance arrived quite quickly in those days. This was 20 years ago. This coming December the 16th, it would be, 20 years ago. Yeah, exactly 20 years ago.
What happened to your passenger, Barry?
Sorry? My passenger, fortunately, we saw the impact coming, and I flung myself over to the left and pulled him back and held him back. So he was very lucky and came away with mere scrapes and bruises and bruised ego and that type of stuff. So I was very, very pleased about that. If he was blinded or injured severely or something like that, I don't know if I could have lived with myself. Terrible.
So you landed up in hospital?
Yeah, 3-4 months in hospital, emotional roller coaster ride. Now you are permanently disabled, although they've managed to save your life. I lost a lot of blood. They managed to save my legs from amputation as well, but that's it. My eyesight completely gone. It's just, it's like Eskom, the big flash on one of those huge big switches that you pull and switch it on, and the big flash of sparks and everything like that. Well, I don't know if Eskom's such a good example of that, but it's that kind of realization just happens in your head. It's a divine moment. Poof, it just happens. And I realized that physically I was healing beautifully. You know, the whole knitting needle, you want to get down the plaster cast and the strapping had come off, the 49 stitches around my eyes had come out. But mentally I was down the tubes. I was very, very close to committing suicide. If the opportunity was there,
you would have
terrible.
Done
very worried about my young family, 2 young boys, one 18 months, the other 7, 8 years old. Wife and I had just been married for 9 years, new home, all worried about that stuff. Wife's going to pack off and run off and find somebody
who can see.
No, not only that, who's not such a silly fool driving around like a lunatic on the roads and trying to kill himself and that type of stuff, So,
the day the realization hit home that you were never, ever going to see again, can you remember that moment?
I do remember that moment because, in fact, I went through several back-breaking operations that tried to get my retinas to go back into and heal up against the optical nerve because the retinas had fallen into the bottom of the eye with the impact. And so you put special oil into the eyeball, and then you had to lie with your face, nose pointing straight down for 10 days. That was hugely painful. And then they tried to laser them back and all sorts of stuff, and nothing ever worked. The days that technology in those days wasn't that great. But the doctors gave me quite a lot of hope, which I think was not very good for me. But that's my character. I would have preferred to have told rather
the bare truth,
the bad
straight
truth,
up.
yeah. So there was about a month of this kind of half hope happening out there, and then finally it was confirmed. No, that's it. You will be totally blind for the rest of your life.
Now, normally someone would go into the deep, dark valley of depression after getting news like that. Was that your case?
Absolutely, it was. Depression wasn't so much for myself, but it was more for my family, my business, and all the things that I loved in life. Motor cars, motor racing. Not being able to see my wife getting dressed for work anymore, my 2 children. Yeah.
So did the acceptance day come, though? And if it did, when did it come?
The acceptance came one evening. Well, in fact, it was in a morning because throughout the hospital stay, my hospital room had tons of people coming through it. No less than 10 and sometimes upwards of 30 people coming to visit me of an evening. And even customers coming to pay their bills. It was fabulous. And it was huge parties every night. And then one morning I woke up and scratching myself and feeling that physically I was healing, but mentally on the edge of suicide. And I thought to myself, now hold on a second, Barry. Hold on a second. And this is when the realization actually happened, that aha moment.
The light bulb moment.
Yes, yes. You are healing physically, but mentally you are down the tubes. What is this? How can... And that's when it clicked. And you create what is known as motivational speaking, affirmation, a yes statement, the big you-ha moment.
As somebody once described it as sweet self-talk.
Correct. But this is actually quite hard self-talk because of the level of depression.
No, but I'm saying as opposed to negative and bad self-talk.
Okay, It's seriously positive, hard talk to oneself. And the affirmation that I made to myself is, you've got this terrific group of friends and circle of support that is around you, that loves you to bits, that is full of advice, and you're not going to let them down. You're going to feel obliged to them, and you are going to show them that you've been a success. Halfway through your life, you're going to pull yourself out of this and become successful once again.
In 1991, you started, I believe, doing voluntary work at the South African Guide Dog Association. 91, yeah. And it was there, I believe, that you met people who also influenced you in a very, very positive direction. Correct.
I ended up doing... Well, they didn't have a public relations person in Cape Town in those years. So after doing quite a lot of volunteering and fundraising collection, organizing fundraising things around here, I started doing on-the-stage PRO work, advertising guide dogs, invited to Rotary Lions and churches and all sorts of issues and people around the country, Cape Town. And that actually, although initially very nervous, but that gave me the platform to launch my public speaking career from.
And while we're on the subject of guide dogs, we need to introduce at this point your girlfriend.
My love of my life, next to my wife and my children, yes, Vixen.
Vixen, yes. Tell us about her.
Vixen is a chocolate Labrador, very rare. You don't get many of them around.
I was going to tell you that because it's not often, and I'm sitting here with a picture of her in front of me, not often that you get a breed as a guide dog.
Very, very seldom. They're more popular over in the UK, where there's a lot more breeders of them, but there's very few breeders in South Africa. My previous 2 guide dogs was Theo. He was a beautiful, regal, noble Alsatian or German Shepherd, as they're commonly known.
Yes, yes.
And my second guide dog, who's lying out on the patio right now in the sun, is Lambert. He's just turned 13 years old on the 7th of November. He's getting old and
long in the tooth,
grey. He's a black Labrador. And he's done his job. And Vixen is a lady that works for me now and runs around.
And Barry, so how's your family adapted over the years? It can't have been easy.
No. In fact, just last night, Julie and I were chatting about some issue. And she said to me in an angry voice, if only you hadn't gone blind.
Oops.
So no, even 20 years later, it still burns. It still hurts. Yeah.
And on a practical level, once you got home, finding your way around things, bumping into stuff, did you have all of those?
That was actually slowed down miraculously by the fact that I was still in plaster casts right up to my hips, from my toes to my hips. So I was either in a wheelchair or else sliding myself around on my body all around the house and wearing the heels of these plaster casts to pieces. But and when they came off, and I finally persuaded the doctors, no, look, these legs are all right, now get them off, please.
Yes, sweet.
They were completely melted away, atrophied. I had to get muscle back onto them again and virtually had to learn to walk again at the age of 34.
Wow. Barry, you haven't left racing completely. In fact, your heart is still in it. And of course, are you the world's only blind navigator? Did I read correctly?
No, motor racing commentator.
Motor racing commentator.
Although I have done a bit of blind navigating as well.
That's what it is. Tell us how that came about.
In fact, those of you listeners that were at motor racing last Saturday, we had the national finals, West Bank finals down at Killarney on Saturday. You would have heard my voice going out on the PA system. But we put braille numbers on the sides of the cars.
Okay.
Oh, no, come on, Lynn, you blonde.
No, I'm not blonde. You see, it's one advantage in not seeing somebody. You don't know whether they're being truthful or not just by looking at them.
No, I'm not. It's a big joke, and it's the answer to the question I give every time. I get everybody scratching their heads. What on earth is he talking about? No, I don't physically stand up at the window holding microphone and physically and moment by moment tell of what's happening out on the racetrack. My position is more in the background. We've got a highly important safety network of walkie-talkies, all the marshals, all the flag marshals, the crash marshals, the fire tenders, the race control, and motorsport is not a safe sport. It can be quite dangerous at times. And I monitor all of those, and with a very good knowledge of the circuit, having raced many thousands of laps around it myself, know exactly what's going on in the background. And when one of my commentators, which I'm listening to at the same time, tell me that, where's Cyril van der Merwe? He's disappeared. I'll know exactly where Cyril is. His wheels come off, he's gone into the pits or whatever.
So your ears are literally bombarded, are they?
Absolutely. I can come home from a day's motor racing with my ears ringing because sometimes you've got the volume on the radio turned up too high and it blasts you.
Yes, indeed. Now tell us about your presentations, because you obviously are in demand and people love hearing your story, the story you're relating to us now, your privileged radio audience. But tell us how you, don't give away all your state secrets, but tell us how you structure your presentations.
Okay, well, there's three of them. I do Master of Ceremonies work as well for awards functions and stuff like that. That's quite normal, and there I would just add as the workers that go between one feature of the evening and the next feature and seamlessly put something together. That's quite popular. Then secondly, this time of the year particularly, there's lots of awards functions and parties and stuff like that. People don't want a high-impact, soulful, inspirational, motivational type of presentation. So I do a lot of stand-up comedy and chat to them, and lots of gags about blind people, lots of jokes about myself, and often audience-specific depending on what type of organization it is. Mm-hmm. But the high-impact motivational stuff, I'm sorry, it sounds like somebody's garden service has arrived down the road.
But that's fine. It's not too intrusive at this point. It's fine.
Okay. What I do is, I've developed the winning
personal profit recipe. I was going to ask you about that. Yes.
What I do is the presentation normally, and this is the more popular one. There's several on my website, but the more popular one is If it is to be, it's got to be me. That's the title of it.
Okay.
And there I will start off with the first half of the presentation, normally about an hour, hour and a half, where I'll describe the accident and how it affected me and the family and my business and all the people around me quite severely, the emotional roller coaster ride, the highs, the lows, to what is known as my famous ability statement, where I've chosen the word ability to remind me of the 7 important lessons along this experience, this journey that we've traveled on. And they start with A stands for attitude, B for belief in oneself, I for inspiration, and the other I for insight, and lessons of life, and so on and so forth. And that works extremely well.
Because you can elaborate on each one of those as you go along.
I elaborate, and when I'm doing corporates and they get a worksheet with the word ability down the left-hand margin with space for them to make notes on it, and then 7-8 pages of other important homework that they can take home. Thought lessons, positive thinking, how to move your mind from negativity into positivity, and that type of stuff.
Fantastic. And they always say, and I've heard a motivational speaker say this to me one day, when I asked her how she does what she does, how she manages to do what she does, because it can be pretty tiring and pretty pretty taxing. That's the word I was looking for.
Emotionally energy draining.
Yes, and from a mind point of view too, because you're thinking all the time. You need to be on top of your game as you performing, in inverted commas.
Absolutely.
And she said this to me, and initially I thought it was a very strange statement to make. She says, people who are motivational speakers are, for the most part, always in need of motivation themselves. And so as you motivate others, you also motivate yourself in the process.
Correct. It is what is known as being a cathartic experience, a self-cleansing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. How do we get in touch with you, Barry?
Sorry?
How do we get in touch with you?
2 easy ways. Email address, barry@turbo, as in motorcar, turbo talk, all one word.
Turbo Talk, yes.
TALK.co.za.
Yep.
Or alternatively, my cell phone number, 083
Yes.
230 5753.
5753. Can I just run that by you? It's barry@turbotalk.co.za and then 083 230 5753. Barry, just a final word from you, please. What do you want to leave us with?
I want to leave with, from my point of view, it is hugely rewarding. After you've done what we commonly colloquially call a gig, a performance, a presentation, that people come to you and say, wow, that just touched me. This is what's happening in my life, if they're open about it, and it has just helped me develop and change my thoughts along those lines. And what's even more rewarding is that people will come to me 10 years later. They've been overseas for their gap year and this and that. They've taken my document with them, and when they're feeling down, they go over it again, and it just revitalizes everything. And that is what the most rewarding thing is. It is really fabulous.
And I love one of your slogans. I'm not sure whether this is one of yours, but it certainly was the slogan which headed the newspaper article I came across. You don't need eyesight to have vision.
Correct. That is one of my slug lines,
Yeah. Thank you, Barry. Bless
Thank you, Lynn.
Lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Here's BB1.